The morning mist clung to the ancient walls of Kensington Palace like a protective shroud, but beneath its peaceful exterior, danger lurked in shadows that had gone unnoticed for far too long. What began as a routine security check would unravel a web of deception that threatened the very heart of the British royal family. A single discovery by a dedicated royal protection officer would trigger an unprecedented emergency response, putting Princess Charlotte's safety at the center of a crisis that would test every protocol, every relationship, and every assumption about security within the palace walls. This is not just another royal story about privilege and ceremony. This is the true account of how one person's vigilance and courage prevented what could have been an unthinkable tragedy, and how the aftermath would forever change how the royal family approaches the protection of their most precious members. Sometimes the greatest threats come not from strangers, but from those we trust most. Detective Sergeant James Morrison had been protecting members of the royal family for 12 years, but he had never felt the weight of responsibility more heavily than on that crisp October morning. The autumn leaves danced across the courtyard of Kensington Palace as he began his routine security sweep, a procedure he had performed thousands of times before. What made this morning different wasn't the weather or the schedule, but the nagging feeling in his gut that something was off. Morrison had been assigned to Princess Charlotte's protection detail 6 months earlier, following a rotation from Prince William's team. The transition had been seamless, or so everyone believed. The young princess, now 8 years old, had quickly warmed to Morrison's gentle but professional demeanor. She would often greet him with a bright smile and ask about his family, showing the same genuine interest in people that had made her grandmother, Princess Diana, so beloved. The detective sergeant began his morning inspection in the East Wing, where Princess Charlotte's private quarters were located. The security protocols were rigorous and well-established. Every room, every corridor, every possible entry point had to be checked and cleared before the princess began her day. Morrison moved methodically through the familiar routine, his trained eyes scanning for anything unusual, any sign that the sanctity of the royal residence had been compromised. As he approached Princess Charlotte's playroom, Morrison noticed that the door was slightly ajar. This immediately raised his concern, as all doors in the private quarters were supposed to remain locked during overnight hours. He paused, listening carefully for any sounds from within. The silence was complete, but his instincts, honed by years of protection work, told him to proceed with extreme caution. Morrison slowly pushed the door open and stepped inside. The playroom looked exactly as it should, with toys neatly arranged on shelves and small furniture positioned perfectly for a young princess. But as his gaze swept across the room, something caught his attention. Near the window, partially hidden behind a large dollhouse, was a small electronic device that definitely did not belong there. His blood ran cold as he recognized what he was looking at. The device was sophisticated, clearly professional grade, and it was positioned with a perfect view of where Princess Charlotte typically played. Morrison's training kicked in immediately. He knew better than to touch the device or disturb the scene. Instead, he quickly backed out of the room and reached for his secure communication device. The call went directly to Commander Sarah Mitchell, head of Royal Protection. Morrison's voice was steady but urgent as he reported his discovery. Within minutes, the entire palace was placed under lockdown. No one was allowed to enter or leave the premises, and all members of the royal family were immediately moved to secure locations within the building. Princess Charlotte was in the middle of her morning breakfast when Morrison appeared at the dining room door. She looked up with her usual cheerful expression, unaware that her world had just been turned upside down. Morrison approached the table where she sat with her nanny, Mrs. Sissom, Elizabeth Hartwell, who had been with the family for 3 years. The nanny's reaction to Morrison's presence was immediate and telling. Mrs. Hartwell's face went pale, and her hands began to tremble slightly as she set down her teacup. Morrison noticed the reaction but kept his expression neutral. He had learned long ago not to show his suspicions until he had concrete evidence. Morrison gently explained to Princess Charlotte that there would be a change in her morning routine. She would need to stay in the secure area of the palace for a while, and she wouldn't be able to play in her usual playroom. The princess accepted this news with the resilience that royal children learn early, though Morrison could see the disappointment in her eyes. As Princess Charlotte was escorted to the secure wing by another protection officer, Morrison turned his attention back to Mrs. Bache, Hartwell. The nanny was clearly agitated. constantly checking her phone and asking repeated questions about when the restrictions would be lifted. Her behavior was becoming increasingly suspicious, and Morrison made a mental note to have her activities investigated thoroughly. The forensics team arrived within an hour, dressed as maintenance workers to avoid attracting attention from palace staff or any potential accomplices. They immediately confirmed Morrison's worst fears. The device was indeed a sophisticated surveillance system, capable of recording both audio and video. Even more disturbing was the discovery that it had been in place for several weeks, meaning that intimate moments of Princess Charlotte's private life had been captured and potentially transmitted to unknown parties. Dr. Technical Specialist Robert Chen, who led the forensics examination, explained to Morrison that the device was of a type typically used by intelligence agencies or highly sophisticated criminal organizations. It was not something that could be purchased by an ordinary person, and its installation would have required detailed knowledge of the palace layout and security procedures. As the investigation deepened, Morrison learned that the device had been transmitting data to an encrypted server located outside the United Kingdom. The implications were staggering. Not only had Princess Charlotte's privacy been violated, but sensitive information about royal family routines, security protocols, and private conversations had potentially been compromised. Commander Mitchell arrived at the palace to personally oversee the investigation. She was a veteran of royal protection, having served in various capacities for over 20 years. Her reputation for thoroughness and discretion made her the perfect person to handle such a sensitive situation. As she reviewed the initial findings with Morrison, her expression grew increasingly grave. The investigation expanded rapidly. Every member of the palace staff who had access to the princess's private quarters was questioned. Background checks were reopened and scrutinized for any red flags that might have been missed during the initial hiring process. Security footage from the past several weeks was reviewed frame by frame to determine when and how the device had been installed. Mrs. Hartwell's behavior continued to raise suspicions. When questioned about her access to Princess Charlotte's playroom, she became defensive and provided conflicting accounts of her activities. She claimed that she had only entered the room on specific occasions and always in the presence of the princess, but security footage showed her accessing the room alone on multiple occasions during the past month. The nanny's financial records also raised questions. Despite her modest salary, she had recently made several large purchases and had opened a new bank account with a significant deposit. When pressed about the source of these funds, Mrs. Hartwell claimed they came from an inheritance from a distant relative, but investigators were unable to verify this story. Morrison found himself at the center of an investigation that was growing more complex by the hour. The discovery of the surveillance device was just the beginning. As more evidence was uncovered, it became clear that this was not a simple case of unauthorized recording, but potentially something much more sinister. The technical analysis revealed that the surveillance system was part of a larger network. The device in Princess Charlotte's playroom was designed to work in conjunction with other equipment, suggesting that the entire palace might be under surveillance. This discovery prompted an immediate and comprehensive sweep of all royal residences. As teams of specialists worked through the night, Morrison remained close to Princess Charlotte, ensuring her safety while trying to maintain some sense of normalcy for the young girl. She had been told that there were some technical issues that needed to be resolved, but she was beginning to sense that something more serious was happening. The princess's parents, Prince William and Catherine, were immediately informed of the situation. They rushed back from their scheduled engagements and arrived at Kensington Palace in the early afternoon. Morrison watched as they were briefed on the details of the discovery and the ongoing investigation. Their shock and anger were evident, but they maintained their composure, understanding the need for careful and methodical investigative work. Prince William's military training served him well in this crisis. He immediately began asking detailed questions about security protocols and demanding a complete review of all protection procedures. Catherine's maternal instincts were focused primarily on Princess Charlotte's emotional well-being and ensuring that her daughter felt safe and protected during this traumatic time. As the first day of the investigation drew to a close, Morrison reflected on how quickly a routine morning had transformed into a major security crisis. The discovery of the surveillance device had opened a Pandora's box of questions about palace security, staff loyalty, and the safety of the royal children. The investigation was far from over. In fact, Morrison sensed that they had only scratched the surface of what might be a much larger and more dangerous conspiracy. The device in the playroom was sophisticated and expensive, suggesting backing by well-funded individuals or organizations. The implications for national security as well as the personal safety of the royal family were enormous. As night fell over Kensington Palace, additional security measures were implemented. Extra protection officers were brought in, and the palace was placed under round-the-clock surveillance. Morrison knew that the days ahead would be challenging, but he was determined to uncover the truth and ensure that Princess Charlotte and her family were safe from whatever threat they were facing. The young detective sergeant had started his day with a routine security check, but he was ending it as the key figure in an investigation that could have far-reaching implications for the British monarchy. The weight of responsibility was enormous, but Morrison was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The second day of the investigation brought revelations that shocked even the most experienced members of the Royal Protection Unit. Morrison arrived at the palace before dawn to find that the overnight sweep had uncovered 2 additional surveillance devices, confirming his worst fears that the threat was far more extensive than initially believed. The first device was discovered in Prince George's bedroom, hidden inside what appeared to be an ordinary educational toy that had been a recent gift from a trusted family friend. The second was found in the family's private dining room, concealed within an ornate picture frame that had been hanging on the wall for months. The sophistication of the concealment and the strategic placement of all 3 devices indicated a level of planning and expertise that pointed to a highly organized operation. Dr. Chen's technical analysis revealed that all 3 devices were connected to the same network and had been transmitting data to multiple overseas servers simultaneously. The encryption used was military-grade, suggesting either state-sponsored surveillance or involvement by a highly sophisticated criminal organization with access to advanced technology. Morrison stood in the Situation Room that had been hastily established in one of the palace's secure conference rooms. The walls were covered with photographs, timelines, and connection charts as investigators worked to piece together the puzzle. Commander Mitchell had assembled a team that included representatives from MI5, the Metropolitan Police's Counter-Terrorism Command, and technical specialists from Government Communications Headquarters. Mrs. Hartwell had been taken into custody for questioning, but she maintained her innocence despite mounting evidence of her involvement. The financial investigation had revealed that her mysterious inheritance story was completely fabricated. The funds in her new bank account had been transferred from a complex web of offshore companies that investigators were still working to trace. What made the case even more complex was the discovery that Mrs. Hartwell was not working alone. Analysis of her communication records revealed contact with at least 3 other individuals, including someone identified only as the coordinator in encrypted messages. These communications suggested that the surveillance operation was part of a larger plan, though the ultimate objective remained unclear. Morrison's role in the investigation had evolved beyond that of the discovering officer. His intimate knowledge of palace routines and his close relationship with Princess Charlotte made him invaluable to the investigation team. Commander Mitchell had assigned him as the primary liaison between the investigators and the royal family, ensuring that the family's needs were met while the security crisis was resolved. Princess Charlotte was struggling with the disruption to her routine. She had been moved to a secure apartment within the palace that felt more like a luxury hotel suite than her familiar home environment. Morrison spent considerable time with her, playing games and reading stories while maintaining constant vigilance for any signs of distress or unusual activity. The young princess had begun asking more pointed questions about why she couldn't play in her regular playroom or why Mrs. Hartwell was no longer around. Morrison and her parents had crafted careful responses that acknowledged her concerns without revealing the frightening truth about how her safety had been compromised. The investigation took a dramatic turn when cyber specialists managed to penetrate part of the surveillance network. What they found was deeply disturbing. The recorded material included not just casual footage of Princess Charlotte playing, but strategic intelligence about the royal family's security procedures, private schedules, and personal relationships. Among the most concerning discoveries were recordings of private conversations between Prince William and Catherine discussing security arrangements for upcoming public events. This information could potentially be used to plan attacks or kidnapping attempts, making the breach not just a violation of privacy but a serious national security threat. Morrison found himself working closely with Agent Sarah Collins from MI5, a specialist in domestic surveillance and counterintelligence. Agent Collins had been tracking similar surveillance operations across Europe and believed that the threat to Princess Charlotte might be connected to a larger network targeting high-profile political and royal families. The investigation revealed that the surveillance equipment had been installed over a period of several months, with each device placed during different time periods when various staff members had legitimate access to the areas. This suggested a coordinated effort involving multiple individuals with detailed knowledge of palace operations and security procedures. Mrs. Hartwell's role appeared to be that of a facilitator rather than the mastermind. Under intense questioning, she finally admitted that she had been approached by an individual claiming to represent a documentary production company that was secretly filming royal family members for what was described as a positive portrayal of modern monarchy. She claimed she had been told that the recordings would be used to show the royal family in a favorable light and would never be broadcast without permission. However, investigators quickly determined that no such documentary company existed, and the payments Mrs. Hartwell had received were far in excess of what would be reasonable for such cooperation. Her story continued to evolve under questioning, suggesting that she knew more about the true nature of the operation than she was initially willing to admit. The breakthrough came when technical specialists managed to trace one of the offshore accounts used to pay Mrs. Hartwell. The account was linked to a company that investigators had been tracking in connection with industrial espionage cases involving several European corporations. This connection suggested that the surveillance of Princess Charlotte might be part of a broader commercial or political intelligence operation. Morrison worked with Agent Collins to develop a profile of the likely perpetrators. They concluded that the operation required significant financial resources, technical expertise, and detailed knowledge of royal security procedures. This pointed to either a state-sponsored intelligence operation or a highly sophisticated criminal organization with specific objectives related to the royal family. The investigation expanded to include a comprehensive review of all palace employees hired within the past 2 years. Background checks were reopened, and investigators began conducting detailed interviews with staff members who had access to the areas where surveillance devices were discovered. During this process, they uncovered concerning information about 2 other staff members who had been hired through the same employment agency that had recommended Mrs. Hartwell. Both individuals had provided references that, upon closer inspection, proved to be difficult to verify independently. One of these employees, a maintenance worker named David Thompson, had been responsible for several repair projects in areas where surveillance devices were later discovered. When investigators attempted to question Thompson, they found that he had failed to report for work and could not be located at his registered address. The second suspicious employee was Maria Santos, a cleaning supervisor who had been given extensive access to private areas of the palace. Unlike Thompson, Santos appeared to be conducting her duties normally, but investigators noticed that she had been taking detailed photographs of various rooms under the pretense of documenting cleaning procedures. Morrison coordinated with local police to locate Thompson, while surveillance was placed on Santos to monitor her activities, without alerting her to the ongoing investigation. The goal was to determine the extent of the conspiracy while gathering evidence that could lead to the identification and arrest of the operation's leaders. Princess Charlotte's parents were struggling with the realization that their daughter's safety had been compromised by people they had trusted. Prince William expressed particular anger about the violation of his children's privacy and the potential security implications of the recorded information. Catherine focused her energy on ensuring that Princess Charlotte felt secure and loved during this difficult time. She spent hours with her daughter maintaining normal activities as much as possible while staying within the secure areas of the palace. Morrison observed the family's resilience and was impressed by their ability to maintain composure under such stressful circumstances. The technical investigation continued to yield disturbing results. Analysis of the surveillance network revealed that the system was designed not just to record activities, but to transmit real-time information about the royal family's movements and schedules. This capability suggested that the ultimate goal might have been to facilitate a physical attack or kidnapping attempt. Dr. Chen discovered that the surveillance system included features that would allow remote activation of recording devices, meaning that the perpetrators could potentially listen to conversations or observe activities in real time from anywhere in the world. The implications for royal security were staggering, as sensitive information about protection procedures and family schedules had been continuously transmitted to unknown parties. Morrison worked with Commander Mitchell to develop new security protocols that would prevent similar infiltration in the future. They recommended comprehensive background investigations for all new hires, regular security sweeps of all royal residences, and the implementation of advanced counter-surveillance technology. As the investigation entered its third day, the scope and sophistication of the surveillance operation had become clear. What had started as Morrison's discovery of a single device had evolved into the uncovering of a complex conspiracy involving multiple individuals, advanced technology, and potentially significant threats to national security. The investigation was far from over, but the dedication and professionalism of Morrison and his colleagues had prevented what could have been a catastrophic security breach. Princess Charlotte remained safe, but the knowledge that she had been watched and recorded by unknown individuals for months would have lasting implications for how the royal family approached security and privacy. Morrison reflected on how his routine security check had uncovered one of the most serious breaches of royal security in modern history. The weight of responsibility continued to grow as the investigation revealed the true scope of the threat they were facing. The investigation entered its most critical phase when Agent Collins received confirmation from her European contacts that similar surveillance operations had been discovered targeting other royal families across the continent. The pattern was becoming clear, and the implications were more serious than anyone had initially imagined. Morrison found himself at the center of an international investigation that stretched from London to Brussels, from Madrid to Stockholm. The surveillance network that had infiltrated Kensington Palace was apparently just one node in a vast intelligence-gathering operation targeting European royalty and political leaders. The breakthrough came when cyber specialists managed to decrypt several communication channels used by the surveillance network. The messages revealed that the operation was being coordinated by an organization calling itself Crown Intelligence, which claimed to be gathering information for wealthy private clients who wanted detailed intelligence about royal family activities for unspecified purposes. What made the discovery particularly alarming was the revelation that Crown Intelligence was offering its services to the highest bidder. The intercepted communications included discussions about selling recorded material and real-time intelligence to various buyers, including tabloid newspapers, foreign intelligence services, and private individuals with unclear motivations. Morrison worked closely with the International Investigation Team to understand the full scope of the threat. They discovered that the network had been operating for at least 2 years and had successfully infiltrated security around several prominent European families. The sophistication of their operations suggested significant financial backing and access to cutting-edge surveillance technology. David Thompson, the missing maintenance worker, was located in a safe house in Brighton where he had been hiding since the investigation began. When arrested, he immediately began cooperating with investigators in exchange for reduced charges. His testimony revealed the operational structure of the surveillance network and provided crucial information about how the devices were installed and maintained. Thompson explained that he had been recruited through what appeared to be a legitimate security consulting company that claimed to be conducting authorized security assessments of various government and royal facilities. He had been told that his work was part of official security improvements and that the recording devices were being used to identify potential vulnerabilities in existing protection systems. However, as Thompson became more deeply involved in the operation, he began to suspect that something was wrong. The secrecy surrounding the project and the substantial payments he received for what should have been routine maintenance work raised his concerns. When he attempted to ask questions about the true nature of the operation, he was told that the project was classified and that his continued employment depended on his discretion. Maria Santos, the cleaning supervisor who remained under surveillance, provided investigators with their most valuable breakthrough. Unknown to her handlers, Santos had become suspicious of the unusual requests she was receiving and had begun documenting her interactions with the people directing her activities. Morrison and Agent Collins discovered that Santos had been keeping detailed records of her contacts, including photographs and audio recordings of meetings with her supervisors. When approached by investigators, she immediately agreed to cooperate and revealed that she had been uncomfortable with the assignment from the beginning, but had been afraid to speak up because of threats made against her family. Santos's evidence revealed the identity of the coordinator, the mysterious figure who had been directing the surveillance operation from behind the scenes. He was identified as Marcus Brennan, a former intelligence officer who had been discharged from government service following allegations of unauthorized surveillance activities. Brennan had apparently used his knowledge of intelligence-gathering techniques and his network of former colleagues to establish Crown Intelligence as a private surveillance company serving clients who were willing to pay premium prices for intimate information about high-profile targets. The international scope of Brennan's operation became clear when investigators discovered that he had been coordinating similar surveillance activities across multiple countries simultaneously. His client list included foreign intelligence services seeking information about European political developments, wealthy individuals interested in royal family gossip, and media organizations willing to pay substantial amounts for exclusive information about private royal activities. Morrison participated in the operation to arrest Brennan, who was located in a luxury apartment in Geneva, where he had been coordinating the surveillance network from what he believed was a secure location. When Swiss authorities raided the apartment, they discovered a sophisticated command center with real-time access to surveillance feeds from multiple royal residences across Europe. The evidence recovered from Brennan's command center was staggering. In addition to the surveillance of Princess Charlotte and her family, the operation had been monitoring the private activities of royal children in Belgium, Sweden, and Spain. The recorded material included thousands of hours of intimate family moments, private conversations, and detailed intelligence about security procedures and family schedules. Brennan's arrest triggered a coordinated international response as law enforcement agencies across Europe moved simultaneously to shut down the surveillance network and arrest the various individuals involved in the operation. The scale of the conspiracy shocked even experienced investigators who had worked on major international crimes. Morrison returned to Kensington Palace to inform Princess Charlotte's family about the arrests and the dismantling of the surveillance network. Prince William and Catherine were relieved to learn that the immediate threat had been neutralized, but they remained deeply concerned about the violation of their children's privacy and the potential long-term implications of the recorded material. The forensic analysis of the recovered surveillance equipment revealed that the operation had been even more invasive than initially believed. In addition to standard audio and video recording, the devices had been equipped with advanced sensors capable of monitoring heart rates, stress levels, and other physiological indicators. Dr. Chen explained to Morrison that this type of biometric surveillance could have been used to identify optimal times for attacks or kidnapping attempts by determining when family members were most vulnerable, or when security protocols might be relaxed. The sophistication of the technology used in the operation demonstrated that the perpetrators had access to cutting-edge surveillance equipment, typically available only to major intelligence agencies. The investigation also revealed that Brennan's organization had been planning to expand its operations to include active manipulation of royal family activities. Intercepted communications discussed plans to create situations that would generate valuable recorded material or to influence family decisions through carefully orchestrated psychological pressure. Princess Charlotte had been remarkably resilient throughout the crisis, but Morrison could see that the disruption to her routine and the increased security presence was beginning to affect her emotional well-being. He worked with child psychologists to ensure that she received appropriate support while maintaining the security measures necessary to protect her safety. The young princess had developed a special trust in Morrison, often asking him directly about when things would return to normal. He found these conversations particularly challenging, as he wanted to reassure her while being honest about the ongoing security concerns that would likely affect her life for the foreseeable future. Commander Mitchell announced that the Royal Protection Unit would be implementing comprehensive new security measures based on the lessons learned from the surveillance breach. These measures included regular counter-surveillance sweeps, enhanced background investigations for all staff members, and the installation of advanced detection systems designed to identify unauthorized surveillance equipment. The psychological impact on the royal family extended beyond immediate security concerns. The knowledge that their most private moments had been recorded and potentially shared with unknown individuals created a lasting sense of violation that would affect how they approached daily activities and personal relationships. Morrison worked with family liaison specialists to help Princess Charlotte and her family process the emotional aspects of the security breach. They discussed age-appropriate ways to explain what had happened and how to help the children feel secure while maintaining necessary protective measures. The international investigation continued as authorities worked to identify and prosecute all members of the surveillance network. The evidence recovered from Brennan's operation provided leads to similar criminal organizations operating in other parts of the world, suggesting that the threat to high-profile families extended far beyond Europe. Morrison's role in uncovering the surveillance network had made him a valuable resource for international law enforcement agencies working on similar cases. He found himself consulting with protection specialists from other countries who were dealing with comparable security threats to their own royal families and political leaders. The media attention surrounding the arrests created additional challenges for the royal family's security team. Morrison worked with communications specialists to manage public information about the case, while protecting sensitive details about security procedures and ongoing investigations. As the immediate crisis passed, Morrison reflected on how his routine security check had uncovered one of the most sophisticated surveillance operations ever discovered. The investigation had revealed not just a threat to Princess Charlotte's safety, but a window into a shadowy world of private intelligence gathering that targeted some of the world's most protected individuals. The successful resolution of the case demonstrated the importance of vigilance and attention to detail in royal protection work. Morrison's discovery had prevented what could have been a catastrophic security breach, with implications far beyond a single family's privacy. 6 months after the discovery that had changed everything, Morrison stood in Princess Charlotte's newly renovated playroom, watching her interact with friends during a carefully supervised birthday party. The room looked similar to before, but every detail had been redesigned, with security considerations that would have been unimaginable just a year earlier. The transformation of royal security protocols had been comprehensive and ongoing. Morrison had been promoted to Senior Protection Coordinator, a new position created specifically to oversee the implementation of advanced security measures across all royal residences. His experience with the surveillance case had made him uniquely qualified to understand both the technical and human elements of modern protection work. Princess Charlotte had adjusted remarkably well to her new reality, though Morrison could see subtle changes in how she interacted with her environment. She was more observant, more careful about who she talked to, and more aware of the security presence that now surrounded her daily activities. The innocence that had been violated by the surveillance operation could never be fully restored, but her resilience continued to impress everyone who worked with her. The legal proceedings against Marcus Brennan and his associates had concluded with significant prison sentences for all involved parties. Brennan himself had been sentenced to 15 years for conspiracy, invasion of privacy, and threats to national security. The international cooperation that had developed during the investigation had led to the establishment of new protocols for protecting high-profile families across multiple countries. Hartwell had received a reduced sentence in exchange for her cooperation, but the betrayal of trust had affected how the royal family approached relationships with household staff. New hiring procedures included extensive psychological evaluations, ongoing monitoring, and regular security briefings designed to help staff members recognize and report suspicious activities. Morrison's relationship with Princess Charlotte had evolved during the months following the crisis. She had come to understand that he had been the person who discovered the threat to her safety, and she often expressed her gratitude in the simple, direct way that children communicate their feelings. Their bond had strengthened, but Morrison was careful to maintain professional boundaries while providing the emotional support she needed. The international surveillance network that Brennan had operated continued to be investigated by law enforcement agencies around the world. Additional arrests had been made in 12 countries, and investigators had uncovered evidence of surveillance operations targeting political leaders, business executives, and other high-profile individuals beyond royal families. Morrison worked closely with international security specialists to share intelligence and develop best practices for detecting and preventing sophisticated surveillance operations. His expertise had become highly sought after, and he regularly consulted with protection agencies in other countries that were dealing with similar threats. The technology recovered from Brennan's operation had provided valuable insights into the capabilities of modern surveillance equipment. Morrison had worked with technical specialists to develop new detection systems that could identify unauthorized recording devices even when they were concealed within apparently innocent objects. The counter-surveillance measures implemented at royal residences now included regular sweeps using advanced detection equipment, random security protocol changes designed to confuse potential surveillance operations, and the integration of artificial intelligence systems that could analyze patterns of behavior to identify potential threats. Princess Charlotte's parents had struggled with the balance between maintaining normal family activities and implementing necessary security measures. Morrison had become an important advisor in these discussions, helping the family understand which precautions were essential and which might be excessive given the current threat environment. Prince William had taken a particularly active role in reviewing and improving security procedures. His military background had given him appreciation for the complexity of protection work, and he had become a strong advocate for providing protection officers with the resources and training necessary to address evolving threats. Catherine had focused her energy on ensuring that the enhanced security measures didn't prevent her children from having normal childhood experiences. Morrison had worked with her to develop creative solutions that maintained security while allowing Princess Charlotte and her siblings to participate in activities that were important for their development. The psychological support provided to the royal family had been extensive and ongoing. Morrison had observed the healing process and had been impressed by the family's ability to move forward while incorporating the lessons learned from the security breach. Professional counselors had helped all family members process the violation of their privacy and develop healthy coping strategies. Morrison's discovery had led to a comprehensive review of security procedures at all government facilities housing high-profile individuals. The lessons learned from the royal surveillance case had been applied to protection protocols for political leaders, judges, and other individuals who might be targets for similar operations. The investigation had also revealed the extent to which private surveillance companies were operating in a legal gray area, providing services to clients whose motivations and intentions were often unclear. Morrison had testified before parliamentary committees that were considering new legislation to regulate the private intelligence industry and prevent similar violations. Educational programs had been developed to help protection officers and household staff recognize signs of surveillance operations. Morrison had played a key role in designing these training programs, drawing on his experience with the royal case to illustrate the subtle indicators that might reveal the presence of unauthorized surveillance. The relationship between the royal family and the media had been affected by revelations about how private surveillance material might be obtained and distributed. Morrison had worked with communication specialists to develop strategies for protecting family privacy while maintaining appropriate public engagement. Princess Charlotte's education had continued with additional emphasis on personal security awareness appropriate for her age. Morrison had consulted with educators and child development specialists to ensure that security education was provided in ways that informed without frightening or restricting her natural curiosity and enthusiasm. What taken place of kissing or marriage? The international cooperation that had developed during the investigation had led to the establishment of permanent working groups focused on protecting high-profile individuals from sophisticated surveillance operations. Morrison regularly participated in these international forums, sharing expertise and learning about emerging threats. Technology companies had been brought into discussions about developing new security solutions specifically designed for high-profile residences. Morrison had worked with engineers and designers to specify requirements for detection systems, communication equipment, and other technological tools that could enhance protection without interfering with normal family life. The financial investigation that had traced Brennan's funding sources had revealed connections to several legitimate businesses that had unknowingly provided cover for the surveillance operation. Morrison had worked with economic crime specialists to help these businesses implement procedures to prevent similar exploitation in the future. A. Staff members at royal residences had received extensive additional training focused on recognizing and reporting suspicious activities. Morrison had been involved in developing these training programs, emphasizing the importance of attention to detail and the courage to speak up when something seemed wrong. Princess Charlotte's birthday party represented a milestone in the family's recovery from the surveillance crisis. Morrison watched her laughing with friends and interacting naturally with the carefully screened guests, and he felt a sense of satisfaction that his discovery had led to improved protection without destroying the joy and spontaneity that made childhood special. The security measures that were now routine at royal events were nearly invisible to casual observation, but Morrison could see the multiple layers of protection that surrounded every aspect of the celebration. Technology, training, and human vigilance had been integrated into a comprehensive system designed to prevent any recurrence of the privacy violations that had been discovered months earlier. As the birthday party continued, Morrison reflected on how the crisis had ultimately strengthened the royal family's security, while demonstrating the importance of maintaining human connections and trust relationships, even in the face of sophisticated threats. His routine security check had uncovered a conspiracy that reached across international boundaries, but the response had shown the resilience and determination of everyone involved in protecting Princess Charlotte and her family. The investigation was officially closed, but Morrison knew that the vigilance it had inspired would continue indefinitely. The threats faced by high-profile families were constantly evolving, and the protection systems designed to address them would need to evolve as well. His discovery had been just the beginning of an ongoing effort to stay ahead of those who would exploit technology and human weakness to violate privacy and threaten safety. Princess Charlotte blew out the candles on her birthday cake, surrounded by family and friends in a room that looked perfectly normal but represented one of the most secure environments ever created for a child. Morrison smiled as he watched her make her wish, knowing that his dedication to routine security procedures had helped ensure that she would be safe to see many more birthdays in the years to come.